The leader of the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah has rejected the latest ceasefire agreement between Israel and the Lebanese government. The U.S. brokered deal has prompted the withdrawal by Israel forces in some communities in southern Lebanon. Lebanese army troops have filled that gap in conjunction with UN peacekeeping forces. But reports from the country's south show continued fighting between Israeli and Hezbollah forces.
A steady plume of smoke rises over the hills of South Lebanon, the result of Israeli airstrikes launched on Thursday. This despite a renewed ceasefire agreement confirmed with the Lebanese government just hours earlier, far away in Washington.
The Lebanese delegation, headed by Ambassador Karam, confirmed a comprehensive agreement to a ceasefire across all Lebanese territories. This agreement represents the embodiment of the independent and sovereign Lebanese state's decision.
Together, we are determined to ensure this. We sincerely hope it will be implemented immediately and quickly. There may be some ups and downs, but we are determined, along with Lebanon, to implement this ceasefire.
Under the agreements mapped out during US-mediated talks, Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, which recently released this footage appearing to show their fighters in combat, is to stop all attacks on Israel and withdraw its fighters from the area south of the Litani River in southern Lebanon. While Hezbollah did not participate in the talks, the group is also banned by the deal from newly formed security zones scattered throughout the country. Israel's military will continue to carry out operations in Lebanon for the time being and will not be withdrawing completely, despite the announcement. While the news was welcomed by Beirut's residents, there is understandably scepticism over how long it will last.
It's really people's right, because they've been telling them the war will end next week, next month, for many months and years. But I am now very optimistic that, God willing, in a month or two, Lebanon will go back to what it used to be.
They've been working on a ceasefire for a while now, and we haven't seen any results. Maybe until yesterday, until they announced it. Honestly, I'm tired of following the news. We're fed up. We are disgusted and bored.
Despite those disappointments, there is once again hope that this time an end to fighting is on the cards.
And Fawaz Gerges is Professor of Middle Eastern Politics and International Relations at the London School of Economics. He joins us now. Good to see you. How do you see the prospects for an end to the fighting in Lebanon?
Well, sadly, I'm not very optimistic at all. 1 out of 10, I would say probably 2 or 3 out of 10. It's really an impossible mission because today, after the ceasefire was announced yesterday, Israel has made it very clear, the defense minister and the military, that the ground offensive will continue, that Israel will continue to attack Hezbollah, that the Israeli army will not pull out of southern Lebanon, and that the hundreds of thousands of Lebanese who are displaced will not be allowed to return to their homes and villages. So the war goes on, and Hezbollah has made it very clear, not just now, in the past few months, that as long as its towns and villages and people are attacked, Israel will basically attack Israeli forces, not only in Lebanon, but attack also the northern settlements. So I don't see how, the United States could really bridge the divide between both the Israeli government and Hezbollah, because it seems to me that the burden and the responsibility was all put on Hezbollah, as opposed to really telling Israel to at least stop its offensive attacks on Lebanon, or promise at least to pull out your forces from Lebanon, or even give hope to the hundreds of thousands of Lebanese who were displaced by Israel from their villages and towns in the past 2 months or so.
How do you see Israel's objectives in Lebanon? Is it just about Hezbollah?
Well, I don't think really it's about Hezbollah now. I think if you listen carefully, and I don't exaggerate, Sarah, The Israeli Prime Minister has made it very clear that Israel's strategy now is based on offensive, absolute security. Just a couple of days ago, he said we are operating on all fronts. He has given the orders to the army in Gaza to occupy 70% of Gaza. He has a security zone in Syria beyond the Golan Heights, occupied Golan Heights. And in Lebanon, Israeli decision makers, including the defense minister, the foreign minister, and the prime minister, they want to establish a massive security zone or a buffer zone to protect the northern settlements. So what we're talking about now is that Israel's belief its security lies in occupying lands in its neighbors in order to protect its citizens. And that's what we call the strategy of offensive realism or absolute security for Israel and no security for its neighbors.
I'd like to pick up on something that you said a little bit earlier about the ability of the United States to, pressure Israel when it comes to, fitting into this ceasefire. We had reports of this very fiery call where Trump had some choice words for Netanyahu and reminded him, in fact, of the corruption charges which are leveled against him. Given that, do you really think that the U.S. cannot pressure Israel into respecting the ceasefire?
The United States can and could basically force Israel to stop its attacks in Lebanon. But the United States does not really want Israel to stop its attacks in Lebanon. Remember, the fiery call between the US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was not about Israel's wider offensive in southern Lebanon. It was about Israel's intention to attack Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. That was the disagreement. And that's why Israeli Prime Minister, in his interview with an American television yesterday, he said we had tactical differences as opposed to strategic differences with the United States. And obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu has convinced his American counterparts he wants to delink the Israel-Lebanon front from the American-Iranian negotiated settlement. And that's why it seems to me that Israel's prime minister is in a race against time in order to really occupy as much land as possible in Lebanon and create a fait accompli. You might say, where's the Lebanese government in all of this? I think the Lebanese government is genuine. The Lebanese government is desperate, but it does not really have any cards to play. It put all its eggs in the American basket, and it all depends on what the Americans want. If I really could summarize the American position in a nutshell, it's really similar to the Israeli opposition, Israeli strategy, is to destroy Hezbollah, to disarm Hezbollah, to really trigger domestic tensions between the Lebanese government and Hezbollah, because that's the only way that Israel could really defeat Hezbollah, internal domestic strife, as opposed to Israel's military strategy, because in asymmetrical warfare, Sarah, Israel could never win the war against Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is not a conventional army. So the pressure on the Lebanese government, and this is really what I fear is that Lebanon now is on the brink of domestic tensions between the Lebanese government that basically now has decided to really align itself with the United States and Israel against Hezbollah, which represents a sizable, social movement and a population segment of Lebanon, because the Shiite community, most of the Shiite community, which Hezbollah, supports Hezbollah.
We talked so much about the Israeli position and the Israeli side. I also need to ask you, because, Iran sees the two conflicts as very much intertwined, demanding an end to the Israeli attacks in Lebanon as part of any deal to end the U.S.-Iran conflict. And Hezbollah, which for its part is not party to the ceasefire negotiations, is rejecting any deal with Israel. Tell us where you think all of this, leaves the conflict, and would it simply be, a matter also of telling Iran that it needs to put more pressure on Hezbollah?
Iran has made it very clear that it will not sign a ceasefire with the United States unless there is ceasefire in Lebanon. You might say, why? Not because really Iran cares a great deal about Lebanon, because Iran wants to see whether Donald Trump could deliver. because Iran has no trust in Donald Trump. And that's why Iran is waiting to see whether Donald Trump could really deliver on the Lebanese front. I think that if we see escalation in Lebanon, in fact, you asked me about the ceasefire, I expect more escalation, strategic escalation. You're going to see Israel bombing Beirut and other cities in the next day or so. I think we could really see Benjamin Netanyahu torpedo basically the American-Iranian ceasefire, because remember, Benjamin Netanyahu does not really want an end to the American-Iranian conflict. His very future depends on it. I mean, you're asking me about Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu has elections in the next few months. So he really, what's happening between the United States and Iran is basically strategic defeat for Benjamin Netanyahu. So what's happening in Lebanon not only undermines the American-Iranian ceasefire negotiations, in fact, it could really implode those negotiations if Israel escalates strategically in Lebanon in the next few days or so.
Fawaz, Gerges, thank you so much. We could ask more questions, but unfortunately we've run out of time. Always appreciate your expertise.
Joining me now is Kristian Brakel. He has spent years working across the Middle East as a political analyst for the UN and the European Union. He is now regional representative of the Heinrich Böll Foundation in Beirut. It's good to have you with us. I'm wondering, how close do you think Lebanon is right now? With this deal, has it pulled back from a possible full-scale war?
I think we are not closer to full-scale war, because for a full-scale war, you would need a functioning Lebanese army that would engage the IDF, and that doesn't exist. And plus, the Lebanese army, the Lebanese government doesn't have a part in this conflict as of now, and has no interest in waging war against Israel. But I fear the brink of military escalation from which President Trump managed to pull at least the Israelis back last Sunday. I think we are much closer going over that brink now.
I know that you have said before that low-level conflict can actually strengthen Hezbollah politically. Is that happening again right now?
I think so. I mean, Hezbollah is saying, like, there is very little for us to win in the current situation, because the declared goal of the peace talks in Washington is to disarm Hezbollah, to like make Hezbollah not a power factor in the country anymore. So what is there for us to win? If that is already the determined outcome, at least for us to stop fighting, we need to have something that we can deliver to the people of Lebanon so that they feel that we are an important political power in the country, and that we should be part of these negotiations, or at least should have a say in the future of the country. And to these conditions, the Israelis so far have said no.
Well, who would you say is really in control right now? The Lebanese government, the Lebanese state, or Hezbollah?
I think neither of them is. The Lebanese state clearly lacks, is part of the peace negotiations, but lacks full control, or lacks any control over Hezbollah. It cannot determine the military escalation from that side. And Hezbollah itself is also not in control. So the only thing they can do is like stop a ceasefire to going into full effect, but they have no power over setting up a real agenda that could bring any progress for the Lebanese people.
I mean, if the state cannot guarantee security, what does that mean for Lebanon as a functioning country?
I mean, that's a very good question, and I think I highly doubt that Lebanon is a functioning state, at least in a conservative sense. I mean, let's face it, Lebanon is a bit like Humpty Dumpty, which broke and never was put fully together again after the end of the Lebanese civil war, and it's a government that has been trying to claw back control for the last years, but of course it has never been a real state since many years now.
I want to maybe push you a little bit here on responsibility. I mean, is this crisis, is it mainly driven by regional powers or by Lebanon's own political system?
I think it's a mix of both. Lebanon traditionally has always acted as an area in which regional powers tried to settle their own grievances, the Saudis, the Palestinians, the Israelis, and Iran, of course. But I mean, it's also what we're seeing now is also an heritage of a very dysfunctional system that Lebanon used to be, like right from the beginning, where like different parts of the population were pressed into a state by colonial powers and didn't even agree on what kind of animal this state was supposed to be.
What about the United States? Does it still have real leverage over what happens next in Lebanon? I mean, it did broker this ceasefire deal, but we know ceasefire deals, how easily they collapse.
The United States has huge leverage over the Lebanese government, and it has, at least theoretically, leverage over the Israeli government, even though it doesn't always use its leverage to its full potential. The party it doesn't have leverage over is Hezbollah and the Iranian government. So as long as the Americans don't manage to come to some sort of agreement with the Iranians on this broader front of the war in the Gulf, I fear their possibilities are also limited. But I would also say the big problem is, of course, like that there has been no answer given from the US administration to the instabilities in the region that have been plaguing not only Lebanon, but the whole region for quite some years now.
And what about Iran? Without Tehran, does Hezbollah, does it even function at the same level?
I wouldn't say without Iran, because Iran is still there and Iran is still a very determining factor. Hezbollah has been pretty weakened, not just like in recent months, but it has been weakened in the war in 2024. It has been weakened through the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, which was a major conduit for weapons transfers from Iran to Hezbollah. It was weakened through the crisis in Venezuela. There are many small building blocks, but still what we see that Hezbollah is still a military capable actor. It's not capable enough like to really push the Israelis back, but it's capable enough to inflict losses on the Israeli army that still play a role and to act as an important spoiler against the Lebanese government and the Lebanese people itself.
Is there, in your opinion, is there a real danger that Lebanon will become the central front in a wider regional war?
Everybody has been talking about like the risk of a regional war for I think 20 years now. And I think this risk still remains on the horizon. But I think what we've seen after the escalations between the Americans, the Israelis, and the Iranians in recent months is that the appetite for such an escalation on a regional scale does not exist. Most regional powers, most of the Gulf countries, the countries that have the military capacities, are urgently trying to reel back, to push back what American and Israeli intervention has undone, the very fragile security architecture of the region. And the biggest problem, I hate to say it, in the moment is like that Israel has replaced its own foreign policy with like endless wars.
Kristian, Mr. Brakel, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. We covered a lot of territory there. Thank you.
Welcome.